So I want to really just start off with everyone thinking about a question. Have you ever wondered how some of the best hackers out there are able to find brand new 0 days? What I mean here is that people who can go find those brand new vulnerabilities. For example, in Google Chrome, if you can find a vulnerability that no one else has found before, you could break into 2.6 million devices. But it doesn't just stop at things like Google Chrome. Everything is really software enabled today, if you think about it, whether it be our cars, our trains, our DoD weapon systems. For example, one of my students, Richard Zhu, was able to find a 0 day in a Tesla not that long ago. And if you think about it, there's 500,000 Teslas on the road. So a 0 day for Tesla would allow you to break into 500,000 cars. That's larger than the population of some states out there. So large cities out there. And so if you think about it, like, how do these people work? And it's something that I've studied for a long time. And I founded a team, for example, at CMU called PPP. They're one of the world's best competitive hacking teams. I think they've won more DEF CON CTFs than any other team out there. I think at one point, something like 10% of TAO, tailored access operations, were my students. And so a lot of people said, Dave, why do you have this team of students? Do they use things like Mayhem? And it's actually the other way around. What I've been asking myself for years is, instead of how do the best hackers find vulnerabilities, the question really should be, how do we teach computers to hack? Because right now we're really at a software security crisis, if you think about it. There's a huge shortfall of cybersecurity talent. The people in this room are rare. You guys are the exception. GitHub estimates there's 570 times more developers than software security experts. So think about it. We're writing code faster than we can review it. And what's worse than that is, although there's been decades of work in software security with like static application security testing, we can see just it's not working. In fact, a recent survey of organizations showed 87% of them have not been able to automate their application security. And so we have too few people to review, and we haven't been able to leverage superior technology yet to help us automate. And that's resulted in what actually DARPA called a permanent offense advantage. Right now, we're really focused, if you think about it, on how do we play catch up? And that's not where we need to be. We need to change how we go thinking about software security. And that's really been the genesis of where we started with Mayhem, where we started with this company, and what we're hoping to lead you on today. How do we take this and make this automated? And so let's talk about one of those hackers. I don't know if any of you ever met, many of you have, say you were software reverse engineers. This was one of my students. I actually recruited him when he was 17 years old. His hacker name is Fluorescence. And you can see there he has a really cool trophy called Master of Pwn. Now, this person is absolutely exceptional. He makes about $1 million a year doing bug bounties. He's found 0 days in Chrome and Internet Explorer and Samsung TVs. The question is, how does he go about doing this? And what I found is, when you look at these people, they all follow a similar methodology. They start looking at the software, and they start looking for under-tested regions, places where a human may get it wrong. And that's where they go looking for bugs. And so I mentioned he was able to find a 0 day in a Tesla. How did he do that? Well, it turns out what he really exploited was Chromium that was running on a Tesla. It turns out Teslas were shipping a vulnerable version of Chromium. And so he'll go look and say, oh, things like, oh, audio processing. I'm seeing some weird behavior there. I see what this algorithm is supposed to be doing, but it's a little bit complicated. And that's how he'll go and find bugs. So he's not going in looking for scripted attacks. He's not going in using Kali Linux. He's really going in deeply into the code and understanding it. And if you think about it, it's really something truly special when he finds that 0 days. I mean, this kid literally found a 0 day in Tesla. He could break into 500,000 cars at one point. He alone knew how to do that. Or Google Chrome, 2.65 billion browsers. We need to start emulating what people like him do and be able to leverage just the power of better computation to find these vulnerabilities first. Now, Fluorescence is one of the good guys. He finds all these bugs and he reports them responsibly so they can be fixed. But I think all of us here in the DoD are seeing an increased presence of the nation state actor. We all know that there's teams of people in other countries who are looking at our systems that are just as capable as Richard. And we have to get there first. So in 2000, it was actually 2014, DARPA asked the question, can we take what Richard does and can we make it autonomous? And they put together a 2-year, $60 million test to see if it was even possible. This was asked as a question, not as a statement. And the way DARPA framed this is the Cyber Grand Challenge. If we can take what Richard does and we can teach computers to hack, well, then we can finally, for the cost of just adding more CPUs, be able to beat our adversaries. And this is super important for the US. If you think about it, there's an overall worldwide shortage of cybersecurity experts, but the US alone has only 6% of the world population. Other nations or coalitions of nations are just going to have more experts than us. So we need to leverage better, faster tools. So when DARPA set this up, they set it up very interestingly. They didn't give you a bunch of applications with known vulnerabilities and say, hey, how many did your analysis find? Instead, they set this up like cyber war. They said, there's a bunch of computers here and they're going to play a hacking contest against each other. And the way that you say you found a vulnerability is very simple. You're able to exploit your adversary. And the way you show that you can defend, well, your adversary can't exploit you. Now, everything's not about just preventing exploits. I mean, the easiest way to prevent an exploit is what my old boss used to call the wire cutter approach. You just cut the cable. They also said, look, your services have to stay up. We have to make sure that you can survive through the, as the DoD calls it, the mission, by having your software available, performant, and still functional. And so when they ran this question, what was really interesting is they weren't just saying, hey, we're going to score you, 10 out of 10 if you find the vulnerabilities. It was really emulating what people do in practice. And one of the things I found fascinating of this is if we go back to what Richard does, one of the reasons we know he's one of the best is he actually plays on a competitive hacking team and engages in these sort of mock cyber battles. This is in fact what a full spectrum CTF is about. And so DARPA asked this question in 2016, ran finals at DEF CON 2016. This was the stage. And the answer was yes, we could actually do it. We demonstrated the art of the possible. And what you'll see here is many great competitors. There's people from Raytheon, from University of California, Santa Barbara with Shellfish. And then of course, for all secures, Mayhem, where we were using a high performance computer to take in code with no developer cooperation. This was completely careened off, find and prove exploitable bugs, as well as be able to defend against them. So what we spent since 2016, what we've been doing is trying to take that technology and bring it into products that you could actually use in practice. Many of you have worked in the DoD for years, so I'm sure you've seen DARPA projects where DARPA has shown something awesome, but then there was no tech transition. And that's because DARPA is about showing the art of the possible. They're not about building it up to the art of the practical today. But here at For All Secure, we believe so strongly in this that we've been doing this. We've been taking Mayhem and incrementally building it up so it's something that you can do and use in practice. And that's what we're going to be working through today. Now, what was interesting is the way we went about this is different. The way we went about winning this contest, in fact, was different than many people expected. And apologies, let me turn off my phone. The first thing we had to do is think about what does it mean to be fully autonomous? How do you build something where a computer can act and react? And the first thing that we really decided is, well, what's going to be important is showing that you can actually break into others. Once we find a vulnerability, we have to patch that vulnerability in our own program. But just as importantly, when we're unsure of whether there's a vulnerability, it's actually better not to patch it. Because every time you fix something that you don't know is broken, you're adding risk. And you don't want to do that. It's kind of like if you've ever gotten overcommitted on a project where you try to get too ambitious, it can get bad. And so the first thing we had to do is show how we could actually come up with exploits that would break into systems. And we're going to call these proof of vulnerabilities in Mayhem today. Second thing is once we found a vulnerability and we came up with an exploit, we had to automatically patch it. Now, the world doesn't stop in security once you patch things. I know many of us are reverse engineers and we say our job is done and we try to exploit it. Really, in security, the way you're done is when a patch is fielded. And the barrier to fielding a patch is often not someone just fixing the bug, it's all the testing to make sure it's compliant and that that patch doesn't break anything. And so we call this the assurance feature. We had to make sure that after we patch something, we didn't break features. And what we ended up settling on was using fuzzing to really satisfy property 1 and 3. How do we automatically prove vulnerabilities and how do we automatically do assurance? And what was really interesting in this contest actually is every single competitor that ended up winning, placing in the Cyber Grand Challenge, so we were number 1, number 2, and number 3, settled on the same technology. They weren't using traditional things like static application security testing. And that's because the results here are very much emulating what Richard does, which is everything you show you can prove. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today is fuzzing. And this, I think, also tries to get at why fuzzing is important. Is what we're trying to do is lead you on a path to making your cybersecurity pipelines autonomous so that you can scale them up, so that you can beat the larger adversary. And what time has shown is that fuzzing is the best approach to do it. So what is fuzz testing? Well, fuzz testing has actually been around for a while. It started off very early in mainframe days where people would do something called trash card fuzzing. So they go into their trash can and they pick up old cards with the little, broken out parts, and they'd use those as inputs to the program. And then in I think it was 1980, a guy named Bart Miller ran a couple of studies where he coined the term fuzzing, where he showed giving a program random inputs caused a large number to crash. Now, fuzz testing has gone way beyond just providing random inputs. It's not what it is today. And in fact, the overall art of it is it's a type of dynamic analysis where the goal is to automatically sample from the set of inputs that a program could take and test the program input space to elicit new behaviors. And so fuzzing is a sort of process where you've written a program and the goal is to elicit all the different behaviors that that program could have. Because at some fundamental level, all an exploit is doing is eliciting a brand new program behavior. It's just showing that you can do something that the programmer didn't intend, but the program itself still does it. So we have on the right-hand side, actually a comic strip from XKCD, a very lovely comic strip, where it's describing how the heartbleed blood bug works. And so this was one of the very first examples where really modern fuzzing was used in architecture. So heartbleed is part of the name of a vulnerability. It's part of OpenSSL. And the way it worked is heartbleed, the vulnerability didn't check that when a user requested a response, it could specify the length of the response, and the heartbleed bug, it didn't check to make sure that request length was appropriate. And so by requesting very long responses, you could actually read from memory you weren't supposed to. And doing that, you could actually leak secrets, such as the SSL keys from the web server. And so really funny comic strip. It's very accurate. What happened is, for example, someone could ask a vulnerable server, are you there? If so, reply potato with 6 letters. And the server would respond potato with 6 letters. Server, are you still there? If so, reply bird. And that's 4 letters. And the server would say, okay, my user wants to know bird and it's 4 letters. I'm going to respond for bird. And then the actual attack would be something like, hey, are you still there? If so, reply hat, but with 500 letters. And so we would reply hat, which is 3 letters, and then 497 other letters in memory past hat would also be returned, including things like the SSL key. So this is what I mean by soliciting new program behaviors. Typically, the programmer was thinking, okay, the behavior is the user is going to ask a question, and I'm going to respond. But there's this unknown behavior out there that's lurking. Hey, if you give too long of a requesting too many bytes, it'll come back with a new input. And the goal of fuzzing is to automatically uncover that sort of unanticipated behavior using, of course, intelligent algorithms.